Hello everybody, the iLord Root here, and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Aerospace program. And so, if you watched my last episode, you might have heard me musing about whether or not I was going to do lifting bodies or space shuttles next, and I thought, you know what, well, point 24 is coming around, why don't I do both? Because point 24 is going to be quite a game-changing experience, for at least from what I understand. And so, what I will do briefly is I will just load up this guy here, this lifting body shuttle. Now, this actually did take a little bit of design here, or a little bit of finagling, because one of the issues I ran into when I was doing this was that we have this massive wing on the back, and if you bring up the center of lift, you'll notice that it's not quite on the center of mass. And so, even with the center of thrust, was actually somewhat centered, which is a little bit surprising to me. But there are a couple of things I needed to avoid. The first was this problem where we have the center of lift being offset, so I'll put some massive tail fins on here. I was almost going to go out with a full out wing, and this was actually a design decision that was considered for the original space shuttle, because if you have a giant wing on a rocket as part of the payload, we know we probably cannot put it way up here, but that's because we'll be putting the wing ahead of the center of mass, so that wouldn't work out very well. Even though in this case it might have made a little bit more sense to do so. But if we put it down here at the bottom, you know, we get our center of lift down below that center of mass. But now we have to contend with the fact that it's hanging off the side, and that this is going to want to cause this guy to pitch backwards, or relative to the cockpit, pitch up. And so I added these vernier engines, and this is something that's actually coming with the new Kerbal space program. Basically, the idea of these vernier engines is that they're going to keep the fuel tank moving forward, or balanced rather. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we can go to town with the throttle. It still has pitch issues. But if we happen to make our path, or our throttle, go in with the relatively in line with the terminal velocity, which we can get from Kerbal engineer, from the flight engineer rather, then these guys will do their job and we won't have to worry too much. Consequently, this is not going to be an optimal launch. We got a lot of fuel here that maybe, I mean, if you look at our orbiter itself, I mean, it's about 9 tons, which is sort of heavy, but not really. And most of that mass is actually in the SRBs and in the liquid fuel tank. Well, once we get up to altitude, that will start draining down, of course, and that will do a lot of things to us, but we'll start flipping out of control if we're not careful, so we're going to go at relatively slow speeds. But we will just go ahead and we'll do ourselves a daytime launch. I have no particular target in mind, although we can go interplanetary with this thing, which is actually quite nifty. So, we're going to do, I don't know, let's get our orbital display up so we can keep a hold of our inclination, and we will maybe go a quarter throttle. And we are relatively stable at this point. That will help us a great deal. We need to throttle down a little bit, in fact. We're going a little bit faster than we need to be going, because that terminal velocity is going to creep up on us. But what we're going to do with this is we're basically going to run the engines at low thrust. And that's okay because we're within our safe G zone at the moment. We will need to moderate this thrust as well as we can. And we're already a little bit ahead of our terminal velocity limit. And remember, we can't go full throttle anyhow, because we're, we're otherwise going to end up in this weird situation to where we'll flip out. So I'm just going to back off the throttle. Actually, a fair amount. Although we will need to throttle up a little bit. I mean, we're doing a fairly decent job here. But, you can already see we're beginning to move forward, or backward here, so I'm going to bring this guy back up over here. And we do need to increase our height just a little bit. You can see we've already begun to pitch up relative to the cockpit. And I'm not going to bother too much with trying to correct inclination, because it's a bit of a fool's errand in this point, or at this point rather. One of the mistakes I made earlier was I didn't take advantage of that nuclear engine, which can be used for control here because it has gimbaling. But we will go ahead and get ourselves up to altitude. And I guess I'll increase the throttle a little bit to try to get this still going on. Now this is actually based off of a lifting body called the Dream Chaser. And the deal is that, yeah, I mean, I have wings on here because the KSP's atmosphere physics simply do not support lifting bodies. It's just something that doesn't really happen. And yeah, I need to throttle back just a little bit so we don't pitch up too much. This is the issue that flying something like this runs into. That you have to sort of make this trade-off between your throttle and your ability to pitch. And this is really now due to center of mass issues. Because now the center of mass is not in line with the center of thrust, so what's going to happen is that that front rocket is going to basically get us going to where we now have this still going on here. I'm just going to begin trying to keep this guy level here. SAS does not really know what to make of this, though, and that is a bit of a problem. I'll just get rid of our surface velocity, and you'll see our total delta V is fairly good. At this point, I'm just going to shut the main engines now, because they're becoming a bit of a hindrance, and we'll use this lifting body effect to really want to raise our apoapsis as much as we can. And we should be left with a fair amount of delta V as a result. I'm going to go for maybe an 80-kilometer orbit. But we want to be vigilant and keep that apsis going. Because on the one hand, while we are in this weird situation to where we're precariously, you know, close to falling out of the atmosphere. I mean, we're in space now, for one. So, we'll get our velocity up. And this is going to be a very low and tight orbit. But we will have a fair amount of delta V left over after this, enough for us to at least do some orbital maneuvers, and I'm not sure how I'm going to approach this. Ooh, we need to... We're very slowly falling. We need to raise our apsis just a little bit. I may want to refuel. If I go interplanetary with this... There we go. Our eccentricity is not the best still here. But I'll just trim that a little bit, and we'll call that a circular orbit. Although, really it would be better to use the Oberth effect. Well, let's in fact see what we have here. If we wanted to go interplanetary, what are our transfers available? We could... Really, there's nothing good here. That's, and Moho would take a little bit too much Delta V. We could do... maybe... a Duna. If we wanted to. Although Jeb will go crazy if we do that. Or we could do Elu, but I don't think we have enough Delta V. I know we for sure have enough Delta V for Duna. So, let's do that. And we'll give ourselves a margin of maybe an hour or so to get there. And I'm not really going to bother landing, I'm just going to do a flyby. But, we can do that. So, let's go to the Space Center, and let's do some time warping. Because going several days into the future at an orbit as tight as what we have is not going to be easy. And sorry about the whole rave thing going on here. It's probably not the best. But we will just, I guess, move on forward. I guess while I'm waiting, I could talk a little bit about the new .24 that's been in experimentals. I haven't personally been with it because I'm not part of the media group. I'm not quite important enough yet. But, you know, it's been in experimentals for maybe about a week, and that's usually a good sign. If it goes into experimentals and nothing goes wrong, then we have pretty much confirmation that it's going to be out the next week or two. On top of that, Squad just released a preview video, so I'm thinking it'll come sometime within the week. And that'll be good, because this adds in support for really lots of things. It adds in support for the, in addition to the Vernier engines that I mentioned, it also adds in RCS-based main thrusters, which is really small, you know, small beer, considered the real thing we've all been waiting for with this update is more or less budgets. I think most people will agree with me whenever they, you know, whenever I say, rather, that the budgets and the reputation and everything like that are pretty much what we're looking for. So let's see if Jeb's gone nuts yet. He's gone several months without water and oxygen, and if we were playing something like, I don't know, like realism, which I have been watching a couple people play the realism mod, then, you know, it's, that might be a bit of a problem. Let's go to a celestial body and we will set up a Duna encounter. Now the question is, are we going to be properly inclined for this? One of the reasons I chose Duna, in fact, is that Duna... Oh, okay. We need to burn... I mean, we could try to go to Eve. I think we passed our Eve window. I believe we actually need to burn at sunset. Or a little bit in. Let's see. I need to be careful with that. I keep on forgetting that the mouse will interact with maneuver nodes now. Let's see. Are we getting closer by doing that? I do not believe so. I believe we have lost our maneuver node, or not our maneuver node, but our encounter. Oh, there we go. We have a Duna periapsis. Can we refine that any further? That will get us to skim the surface just a little bit. So there we go. We'll get there on our next orbit. That'll take us 154 days. At a cost of, looks like a little bit over 1100, maybe 1200 meters per second of delta V. However, we will need to go back and do a few things. I mean, our orbital inclination is actually better than I thought it would be, to tell you the truth. Last time I tried this, it took me, I don't know, the inclination change wasn't bad, but I pretty much, oh, you know what I need to do? Are we out of power? Oh, there we go. Somehow Jub has been living up here without electrical power, which, again, is not something that's a bit of a, it's not really a problem in, you know, stock KSP. I've been watching a lot of Tyler Ray's, or Ryaz, or whatever his name is. I'll link him in the description. If you like long KSP videos, he's got a good series going on, and I highly encourage you to watch his realism series. He does a lot of really cool roleplay based launches as well with his Elegant Design Bureau. that I think is really, it's really quite awesome. He puts a lot of work into it. But, we will go ahead and get this done. I'm probably not going to go into orbit around Duna when I get there. Just because of the fact that if I did, I mean, it would make sense to. And we'll have to carefully consider our options. I think it only requires 110 Delta V to get into orbit, so I might, in fact, do some aerobraking. And with the space plane, that may not be a bad idea, because we can bleed off several meters per second of Delta V, and it doesn't take all that much to get back. I think we're well within our Delta V budget, I believe. So let's just time warp. When we get close enough to this maneuver node, I'm going to do a test burn to get an idea of how close I really want to be when I initiate this burn. It's actually probably going to take a while. So I'm gonna... Okay, so 2 minutes 34 seconds will be what we got. And I'm going to initiate that burn at maybe 117. Now you'll notice too, it's not visible at the moment, but there is a docking port on here. And that is so that we can hook up to that fuel station. When I return from Duna, and I may make this a two-part episode, but when I return from Duna, I may entertain the idea of using that docking port, just to show that this thing is relatively stable. And that it does have the agility to dock. Because what I've done here is I've hidden RCS jets in the body. Now we will have to be very careful here. We will lose most of our mass. Whenever we do this. And we are veering off course very slightly, so I need to change that because we will have a bit of an inclination. Now, what I would want to do eventually here is not use a shuttle to do this, and this has already far surpassed the capabilities of the shuttle. I mean, the shuttle, for instance, does not carry all that much fuel up into orbit. It just carries fuel up for its orbital maneuvering system. And so it would not be able to go to Mars. But in this case, it's okay. I mean, KSP is a fair deal realistic. Oh, do we have our... We do not have Apsis. I'm just going to get that close approach vector down. Let's see, what is our Duna encounter at? Let's get that down as far as we can so we don't have to do too much. Oh, we've hit our limit, I think. Is there a way that we can... Yeah, if we change our inclination, we can get this guy down. Although I need to be careful here because we don't really... We may end up spending a lot of fuel doing this. So I think the plan will be to aerobrake around Duna. Although we've got plenty of RCS fuel at this point, I think we're okay. And we've still got 2 kilometers per second at delta V to spare in our main thrusters. And we are on Duna's orbital plane. So let's just go out here. Really, I need to leave Kerbin's sphere of influence. Let's see what we're at now. Where is our descending node? Our descending node is not currently available. Let's see if that does anything for us, because yeah, the only thing that's really going to do for us, it looks like, is a whole bunch of nothing. Let's see, that's node in 1 year. Oh, well, yeah, I can see why that's not going to do anything. We're on the wrong area here. Now, what are we having another encounter with? Are we having another encounter with, we're not having an encounter with anything, it looks like. I mean, we have time to decide once we get there. But we'll get that apsis down as much as we can. Okay, there we go. It's a little 22 meter per second burn, 22 and a half rather. Let's get oriented for this. And you know, we could almost do this now, but I want to make sure when we do it that we're more or less able to hit the node properly. It's a 3-second burn according to this, so I'm not really going to... Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I needed to pay more attention. Fortunately, I did not completely miss the burn. Although in interplanetary space, it's not that big of a deal. We'll go about half throttle. Oh, I missed it slightly, but that's still that's still a decent apsis for us to have, so let's begin time warping. Our relative inclination is still fairly low. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. So yeah, we'll continue. I was just making sure at this point that we were still recording, because it would suck if we weren't. But we're getting very close in on our deal here, and let's target Kerbal from here. In fact, well, let's get into the sphere of influence so we can get some idea of what's going on here. How long do we have until periaps? We have 3 hours. Well, in that case, whoa. Let's see. I mean, here's the $1 million question. do I want to bother with this? Because we can go here. If we go to our transfer window, we have from why am I not able to? Oh, X for origin. From Eve to oh, not Eve. It'll take us 3 years to get back, it looks like. That cannot be right. Kerbal is 1 year. We could go to Moho. But that's still quite a way around, so what I'm gonna do, I think, is I'm just going to get an orbit around here. Probably should have completely fueled up here, because we are a little bit further out, and the maneuver node lied to me. What is our orbital inclination? Our orbital inclination is 4. We're going actually quite fast. So swinging by the sky may be difficult. If we go back out here, however, and now set Kerbal as our target, I mean, we could potentially go elsewhere. Unfortunately, we're at the slowest point in our orbit, so the Oberth effect, if we're going to do anything, oh, come on, give me my node. Let's see. Well, we're going like this. We need to be going not normal. But maybe, you know what? We'll lower our orbital velocity out here because, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. It's not giving us a node because we have that one open. There we go. Or maybe not. How many nodes do we have open? Well, here's a question. If we had plotted a maneuver node like so, where would it end up? Probably down here. I mean, we are still way too far out. Way further out than I really want to be. Is there a way that we can improve that? I'm not entirely sure. We will lower our periapsis at this point. What I could do, however, is I could send a fuel tug out here. But if we're going to do that, I mean, this sort of correction needs to be done at the slowest point in your orbit. Is there a way that we can slow this down enough to where we bleed off enough delta V that, whoa, yeah. Or basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get us the most bang for our buck here. We'll have 9 minutes to decide on that. Oops. Yeah. A prograde burn at this point will probably be the best thing for us. Let's see, what is our target periapsis here? No, I want to get down as far as I can. Okay, maybe some radial would be okay here. That won't leave us with much delta V to escape. Although, it may not be necessary either. And we do have plenty of RCS. Let's see, if we did normal, will that help us? Yeah, that normal vector, I believe, is what's messing with us. So we can save some delta V there. Although that kind of correction really does need to be taken into consideration here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to optimize this so that we at least get a decent orbit. Because burning normal seems to be what's causing the issues here. Whoa. So we have a periapsis of a lot. Yeah, I'm trying to remember how much delta V we needed to get back. But that should at least get us on the right inclination. I don't know if we're going to be rotating along with the sky, but we'll quick save here just in case. And I really need to be burning now. We can fine-tune our distance as needed. There we go. That will at least get us where we need to be. And we can send a fuel canister here, or if I end up deciding that... Well, the thing is, though, this space plane was not designed to land on Duna. I'm not sure that we could get back. I mean, the deal with a rocket is that we can shed mass. You know, we've been carrying everything we've needed here. So what I may do, because I don't really want to do many rockets here, I might launch a rocket off screen, or I might even just edit the save file and make fuel magically appear. In a normal game, I probably would send a fuel depot. In fact, I doubt I would send a space plane to Duna for precisely this reason. Because, I mean, we're now below 1,000 meters per second at delta V. But we should be able to aero capture at this point. So we are now committed. Let's get in. Let's see if our aero capture is going to work this way. I mean, we have plenty of electric charge, so maybe it's time for me to bring in the solar panels. And we will unfortunately be flying through the dark side of Duna. But the nice thing is we've got wings, so unlike our other spacecraft, we actually do have some control over our apses. In fact, I don't believe I've ever gotten a cockpit view of this. So we'll turn off this still. Let's see, atmospheric efficiency. We are not very efficient in the atmosphere, it seems. But we will bleed off some delta V here. Or not some delta V, but some orbital velocity. And I'm going to do this really weird maneuver to lower our... Whoa, well, what has happened here? We're outside. Yeah, that was not as effective as I wanted it to be. And it kind of defeats the purpose of aero braking. So let's lower that periapsis to 16. I'm going to be a little bit more ballsy and do that, because I'm fairly sure that 16 will work. And given our Delta V crisis, I really do not feel the need to do otherwise. If we can aerobrake, then we probably should. Even though we are, you know, in a very thin atmosphere. And unfortunately, most of the mass of this vessel is probably in the wings. But, we will get that going presently. So, we'll bring in the solar panels. And we are now in physical time warp, or at least in the zone where that is possible. We can also make an inclination correction here. As weird as that must sound. Because we have wings, and that will allow us to use the drag to our advantage. Why is our apoapsis height changing? Yeah, that is not quite what I wanted to do. So apparently 16K isn't shallow enough for our braking either. Oops. Okay, it's a little bit too much. I'm gonna go for like 13K and no more. Whoa. Okay, yeah, I thought for a moment there we passed by the planet. And that is a little bit more like it. And there we go. We are now in the realm of physical time warp, descending at several thousand meters per second. And I will assume the aerobraking stance. One of the problems is that because of aerodynamic stability, we have to be careful here. We can't point towards retrograde or else we'll spin out of control. I'm virtually certain of it. And this actually, you know, this wouldn't be a bad deal. It says we're in space near Duna. I mean, we, okay, I guess that apoapsis height is supposed to go up, because... But look at that, man. That is really something else, isn't it? Let's correct our inclination here. If we can. I think that may be a little bit easier said than done, though. What is our altitude? We're... Wow. I am really quite surprised at how hard it is to aerobrake with this thing. Okay, we're definitely going to want to take a dip down into the atmosphere. And if this doesn't do it, then I'm not quite sure what will. Because this is really... There we go. Retract those solar panels. It would appear as though we're now in this weird situation where we can't even perform the aerobraking maneuver as intended. And that's the deal. I didn't really practice this like I probably should have. But we are getting a substantial amount of aerobraking out of this, and you can see the lifting body effect is working its magic. If we go to the map, you'll see this is beginning to curve around. And our orbital inclination is, whoa, Okay. Well, I guess Jub is going to be magically rescued somehow. Because that's a little bit too far in. And I'm actually surprised at the amount of lift this thing has. I mean, we've got a lot more atmospheric efficiency than I thought we would, to be honest. But you'll get to see at least this thing land. Even though, we went too far into the atmosphere. Let's just take a look at our vessel velocity here, or our vessel status. I don't think that's going to be enough to get us home. So Jeb will, of course, take the suicide pill. That they, I guess at least the cosmonauts, they used to give the cosmonauts suicide pills just in case they got trapped in space. Because space gets rather lonely, and if you know you're going to die of anoxia, then the suicide pill becomes an appealing thing. I mean, there's several options for Jeb here. He could take his cyanide, and it's a good thing, of course, that Kerbals, as far as I know, cannot mate. In fact, how they reproduce is really interesting because they appear not to have any gender whatsoever, or maybe they all have the same gender. But it's, or sex rather. I suppose gender's a different thing from sex, but given that they're apparently asexual, maybe they reproduce through cloning, which would make sense because Jubs always seems to come back even whenever the going gets tough. We need to pitch up quite a great deal here. I definitely was not intending on landing on this planet. I was kinda hoping I would have enough Delta V to be able to come back. But between him, spending almost a year in space, And not being able to get back, I mean, maybe suicide is the only option for him at this point. However, if I do land, I do want to see if I can take off. We're not going to get into orbit because that's going to be incredibly difficult. But if we could do a spaceplane takeoff from Duna, then that would be really interesting, because Duna's actually a really difficult planet to do that on. And we do need to... we need to bring this up quite a bit. In fact, I'm surprised that this isn't slowing down all that much, because our surface efficiency... we do happen to have lift, it would seem. But we don't have other things. Which is actually really quite vague. I'm gonna see if maybe we can't induce more drag and slow us down. I mean, this really, these past couple of episodes have not been going like I've really been wanting them to. I've really been wanting them to go quite a deal, I suppose, more on target. Now, to be fair, I didn't practice this one. The airliner episode, I did practice quite a bit, but I didn't really practice the transcontinental flight. That was possibly why it went wrong. I just assumed that with the right kind of flying, maybe I would have enough Delta V to get over there. And of course, I did not. But it is worth pointing out, however, that this engine is enough to get us a fair amount of Delta V on Kerbal. It's enough to, or not Delta V, but thrust. It's enough to be able to get us into the atmosphere. I mean, obviously, the nuclear engine does give you a lot of Delta V if you use it correctly. And I believe it's something like one nuclear engine. Like, when you reach its limit for Delta V, it'll give you some 17,000. That's with massive fuel tanks, of course. And that would have actually made things a whole lot easier in our case. But basically the idea here, I'm just going to go ahead and put out my gear now, even though we're still in the upper atmosphere. How are we doing on power, by the way? The basic idea is that we're just going to slow down very gracefully, which this thing is good at. It does have a tendency to pitch upwards, which does, or not pitch upwards, but pitch downwards, and that does confuse me a little bit because the center of mass is somewhere in the back. I mean, we still have pitch authority, of course, But at this point, whoa. At this point, a little bit of trim would be good. And what's it taking to maintain stable flight? And furthermore, how far are we from the ground? We're not far. And we'll have to be careful because I can tell strike with that engine. I mean, we're already going fast enough. Now, in Kerbal, this thing has the problem that it will, instead of really, you know, doing much in the way of keeping speed, this thing will glide, but it has the problem that Kerbal's atmosphere is thick enough to where it won't glide all that well. But as you can see here, we're coming in very slowly. The angle is a bit high here. It's a little bit higher than I'd like anyhow. And we're still going really, really insanely fast. At least for the speed we're going. And on Kerbal, this would probably be down to like 60 meters per second by now, which would, I mean, it's not a bad speed. It's, if you think about it, it's really quite fast. It's like 120 miles per hour, I believe, or something like that. And we're lagging like crazy for some reason. But we are now very, very close to landing, and now we have no chance of getting back. Well, Joe, it was nice knowing you. I mean, you could conceivably bail out at this point, but you look happy, and that's really what counts. It was nice knowing you, Job. Well, maybe. This thing is turning out to be a little bit on the indestructible side. No, there we go. Let's just follow some of the bits around. Of course, sir. Resilient wing surfaces are moving about. But, I mean, that's more or less, I guess, the capability of the space plane. It's more than sufficient for Kerbal orbit. Let's just see, do we have debris anywhere? All that debris is probably back on Kerbal. It's probably those launch clamps. But if we go to our space center, and I'll probably end the video shortly after that, I bet you the things that did survive probably include those SRBs. I just want to check that, even though they may have been deleted. Yeah, that's the launch clamps. Well, so much for that. Anyhow, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.